Good morning, Year 5, and welcome to reading. Hopefully all of you got our message that unfortunately we are not opening Year 5 yet and you will be staying as remote learning. We are trying our best to get staff back in school so that we can open Year 5, but for now, well done for working so hard in your remote learning. So in reading today, we are carrying on with Inference, remembering that Inference is reading between the lines, so not what is directly said in the text, but more what is suggested by the author. So it's different to retrieval because we don't just look at the facts, we use what we know about the world and our experiences to come to a conclusion. So we are going to look today at how we use actions, dialogue, and description to help us. So authors always tell us what characters are doing, their actions. It tells us about their personality and how they are feeling. So we infer what a character might like or what they might be thinking based on their action. So for example, if a character stomps out of the room and slams the door, we would infer that they were angry or upset. If the character blushes and looks at the ground, we can infer that they are embarrassed or shy. Words don't tell us this, but the way the character is acting does. Here's another example. I'm going to read this section from Pinocchio. Deep in the forest, beside the ancient oak, he bumped into the cat and the fox. Breaking his promise, he foolishly let himself be talked into burying both coins in the magic meadow. Full of hope, he returned at dawn, but alas, the coins had vanished. So we can infer from Pinocchio's actions that he is not to be trusted because he broke his promise, that he is easily led and he let himself be talked into burying the coins. We can also infer that he's rather silly as the word foolish is used about him burying the coins. So the author there has given us some clues. Here's another example. Malcolm ran for a long time, taking care to keep out of sight. He zigzagged between the trees in the short bursts. He had to put as much distance between himself and the crash site as possible. He needed to get to Lily and give her John's last message before his ticks ran out. So we've actually highlighted all of Malcolm's actions there because that gives us clues about what suggestion the author is making. And we can see here he's being hunted because he ran for a long time. He's trying to keep out of sight. He's zigzagging between the trees. So it's clear that he is hiding. And the actions tell us that. Okay, now let's do some inference from dialogue. So again, in stories, characters use speech to communicate, but we can also use their speech to infer about their character. So here's another example. When they turned to sit, they discovered a woman with a grey swirling bun of hair had arrived and had taken one of their spaces. "That's our spot," Lily complained. "You should have sat in it then," the woman admonished. She settled herself in and shutting her eyes. "Could you be a little bit quieter? I need my sleep." "We're stowing our baggage, you old baggage," Lily grumbled, but she made sure it wasn't loud enough for the woman to hear. So thinking about that section, we can infer about this character. So first of all, it said about them stowing their baggage, which is something that tends to happen when you're on a plane and you stow your baggage, or it could be on a bus where you put your bags up above the seating. So we know that they're on transport, but we can also infer that the woman and Lily are not being friendly towards each other. We've got grumbled, we've got complained, we've got admonished. And if you're not sure about any of those words, make sure you do some research. We also know that although they're not kind to each other, Lily isn't really a rude girl because she knows not to say her insult aloud. That's just something she thought in her own brain. So that also tells us things people think compared to what they say also helps us think about their character. Okay, final bit of inference, inferring from description. Now, we've been looking at descriptive writing in English, or you will be if you haven't watched that video yet, but this also gives us clues. So let's think about what impression we get about Iceland from this travel leaflet. Shaped by hundreds of volcanoes, including around 30 that are still active, it has giant glaciers, wonderful waterfalls, bizarre beaches of black sand, and eerie fields of living lava. No wonder it has been called the land of fire and ice. So from this extract, we can infer that this land is full of natural wonders. We can infer this because it's got volcanoes, it's got black sand, it's got lava. And we can also infer that it is a land of contrast. And we get that from the fact it's got the fire and the ice. So the author didn't directly tell us that, but they inferred it. Okay, your turn now. So pause the screen here, read the passage about Mr. Thompson and Jack. You're going to think about their actions, their dialogue, and the description to answer these two questions. How do you think Jack is feeling? And how do you think Mr. Thompson is feeling, using their actions and their dialogue? So pause the screen and then I'll go through some of the evidence. Okay, hopefully you got some of this evidence. So Jack was feeling tired. You could have had any of these things as evidence. The fact he trudged reluctantly, he was dragging his feet, his heart was thumping in his chest and sweat was starting to prickle on his palms. He had to fix his eyes on the teacher's shoes and glance upwards, and he gulped. All of that showed that he was frightened or scared. So the dialogue and the action there helped us. For Mr. Thompson, we've got that he was angry or that he's an unpleasant man. And the evidence for that was he glared at Jack, his face was stern, he barked and sneered, and his words were abrupt and rudely spoken. Okay, one more practice for you. So again, pause the screen here. Your first question will be find and copy a word which suggests that black bears are reclusive animals, meaning that they don't go out and about, they stay in their area. And the second question I'll show you before you start reading is, according to the text, under what circumstances might a female bear pose a threat? So you're thinking about the actions and descriptions that would show that the female black bear pose a threat. So pause the screen and have a go at answering those two questions. Okay, so question one, the word you were looking for was secluded. Again, that word meaning isolated, keeping to themselves. And the last one was when it's protecting its cubs, they emerge from the den to find food. So about that, protecting its cubs shows that they pose a threat. So hopefully you've been able to use the action, the dialogue, and the description to infer information about the characters. For your activity today, you need to read this text and your questions are on Teams. I'll show you the questions on here as well in case you don't have access to Teams, but you're going to need to read this text first. And then if you have Teams, it's a quiz that you go on and answer 5 questions. So make sure to pause the screen here and then get the quiz open. And if not, I'll just get the questions up on the screen for you here, for you to pause the screen and have a go at these 5, all inference questions about action, dialogue, and description. So well done, year 5. I'm looking forward to seeing your inference answers.